with relatively little trouble this time. Okay, so today we're going to look at another concept. So I've got two classes here. I've got SQL Con and I've got Query SQL. Now, what have we been doing this whole time? We've been making things easier, right? If I come over here, I don't know if this is the one with the one. So this isn't the one that's fully fleshed out like the one we did before. But you guys remember that we moved all of this connection stuff to like connection open and close and stuff. We moved them to properties and classes of their own, right? So we could just call them. So if we had to change them, we only had to change them in one place, right? Like getting the row count and opening and closing the connections and creating the connection objects, right? There's no reason for us to do that stuff again and again and again, right? So we took all these things, moved them into global class properties so that we can use them from anywhere. And if I need to make a change here or set some more properties, I can just do that at the global level and I'm done. So now we're going to expand on that, right? So what do I have here? I've got the class, I've got the class SQL query. I've got a bunch of properties. And the very first method in here is should be query SQL, but it's not. I mean, it is query SQL, but anyway, it's connection string. Oh yeah, that's the constructor. So the very first method in here is connection string. Now, what does this entire class do? This entire class connects to SQL and runs a given script and runs given code and gives it to us in a table format. Okay. Is that the only thing we're ever going to want to do with SQL? Probably not. What are some other things we could do with SQL? Well, we could have classes to create AGs and manage AGs. We could have classes to create and manage logins, create and manage aspects of databases, right? So there are specialty classes that we could write. I mean, yeah, you could pass all that in as T-SQL here, but it's much better if you have the login, your login management class, and you've got one for fixing orphaned users and creating logins and getting information on logins and all that other stuff, right? So it's handy that you would have something like that. In which case, what would we do? We would probably copy this entire class and take the stuff out we don't need, right? Including connection string and probably these hidden guys as well, wherever they are. Yeah, they're there. These hidden guys as well. So we would take all of these guys and we would keep them, and then we'd get rid of the things we don't want. And while we would still have something that queries, it would probably be more something like get login or fix login or create login, something like that, right? So we'd have a host of different methods. Is everybody with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So now that we have this out of the way, why would I want to recreate this class? I mean, I have to copy all this, and I have to copy quite a few of these because there's still going to be a connection string and a server name and a database name and username and password and all that stuff. And there's still going to be something to query, and there's still going to be something that creates a connection string. So why would I have to duplicate all of this effort to create another class? So what we did here, when we took all of that stuff and added it up here as a global setting, or as a global property, we're now going to take that same concept and we're going to apply that at the class level, right? And so this is what we call inheritance. And inheritance is a very object-oriented concept. And inheritance is just what it sounds like. When you get an inheritance from your parents, right? They gift something to you that you didn't necessarily earn, right? Just through the just through you having the same bloodline, you get this money, you get this house, you get this car, right? So you get an inheritance when they die. Sometimes there are stipulations, sometimes you don't get all of it, but whatever your inheritance is, you get it. So it goes from parent to child, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. So when I do, sorry about that, hold on. So I was eating ramen this morning with habanero in it, and I got a little piece of pepper cut in my throat. Let's hope that's better. Okay, so right. So let's take a look at this, and I'm going to comment this out real quick. So what do I have here? I've got the class query SQL, and I've got the class SQL con. And in here, you notice I've commented out connection string. So when I run this guy, and then look at the output, you can see I've got everything here except connection string because I commented it out. Because I don't want the connection string in this class. I want a global class that I can get the connection string from for all of my other classes. So that if I have to make a change, not only does every method in my class get that change, but every class gets that change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on inheritance, and you notice how I've got the connection string here. And to turn on inheritance, it's very easy. All you do is say colon, and then this guy. There we go. So all that says is that this class inherits from this class. So everything that's in this class is now available to this class. So now when I hit run and output, you can see now I have connection string. And the same thing, let's say now that I take this guy, actually, let me show you up front. Let me do that. And if I do a GM on that, I've got 2, 4, 5 methods, right? I created get table data myself in here, right there. It's empty, but that's the only user class that I've created. So now let's take this guy and let's put him up here inside SQLcon. And since this inherits SQLcon, and you notice how in my editor, and if you use a proper editor, you'll get this too, how even though this is a class, they're different colors, just slightly different colors, because one's a child class or a regular class and the other one is inherited. So that's how they show you the inheritance there. So now when I hit go, now you can see I've got connection string. So you don't have to just take what we did here and run with it everywhere and recreate all of this stuff in every class. Create yourself a parent class for the connection, and then you can start creating child classes. And what I usually do is I take this, I put this in an include file by itself, and I put it above everything else. And that way, when I make changes to this class, I don't have to alter, I don't have to what am I trying to say? I don't have to worry about accidentally changing something else in another file. And this because in every one of these, right? So let's say that you've got a script where you're going to be managing logins, right? Well, you don't necessarily want this query SQL class in there, right? You may very well want just the login stuff in there. So therefore, having this SQL con class in a file by itself, you can just import. You can just dot source the SQL con and then your login class, and then the SQL con and your AG class in another file, and then your SQL con and your database management stuff in another file, and so on and so on, right? So it's another way of breaking things up so that you can not have to rewrite code again and again and again. And this isn't the usual example. They usually use like person and student and teacher, right? So they'll say like, the person class will have all of the human attributes, right? So they'll have like, since students and teachers have height, weight, hair color, eye color, and all of that stuff, gender, then they'll put all that stuff in the person class and then just leave the specific stuff to the teacher and the student class. So that's a good example for like, a generic, it's a good generic example for people who don't, know much about IT. But for us, since we've already started this, then the SQL connection is a really good example because it plays into what we've already been doing. Now, real quick, let's talk about constructors, because you would think that constructors are inherited as well, but they are not. When I instantiate this class, it has to have its own constructors. Okay? So, and nothing else in the script changes. So, all the constructors I have here in this class will still count for this version of it, unless you just want generic constructors. So you could put constructors in here, but if you want your own constructors, you can have generic constructors in here. So if you just want the generic default constructor, the empty constructor, then you're already fine. But yeah, if you want to like say that this one can't be instantiated like we did before without server name, database name, username, password, right? You have to instantiate it with enough connection info to make a connection. Then that constructor has to be in this class. Okay, I'm going to leave it open for questions, comments, concerns.
I have a question. Can I create a constructor of the parent in the child? No.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
If you can scroll up once, can I create a constructor within the child class query SQL for SQL con?
Well, I'm not. Okay, so when I create a constructor in here, it won't be creating a constructor for SQL con, right?
Okay.
But you can set the properties. So I can easily call connection string, and I can easily have all of these other properties. I can easily have all these other properties in here if I want to. So move these guys to here. There we go. And so now that I've got all these properties in SQL con, the constructor in this class will set these properties. Do you understand? No, not really.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we create a parent class, like SQL con, we need to have that in mind, right? This is going to be a parent class for the child, so that we place the constructors and other things accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Let's say that you create, so this is the original example, right? So we've got query SQL, and we want query SQL to have constructors, right? We want it to have the exact number of constructors that we need it to have, and that's these guys right here, right? So anytime you create a class, you either A, use the default constructor, or B, use your own. So if you want to use your own, here, let me do this. Let me take that and put that here. So now I've got query SQL here. So now I've got a constructor, right? So when I set these guys, this is just kind of a way of saying, so all of these, hold on one sec. Right, so let me get rid of, no, yeah, because I've got these in the parent. So I'm going to get rid of all these. There we go. And so now that I've got this, then I can set all of these with it. This is just a way of saying, like, you can think of this parent class as like its own include file that keeps all of these things, that keeps all of these properties and methods global, right? So instead of having to rewrite all of this stuff again and again and again, so let's come down here. There we go. And let's pull in some of these guys. Let's pull in that guy. There we go. Get rid of that. And I need the values. Get up there. So I'll take these guys. Put this there. And I'll put this right up there because we'll pretend that we've set it in a script. There we go. So you see, nothing's changed. I still get all of those properties set. The only difference is that now I can use these settings everywhere. So you don't really have to have it in mind because you're going to need to write constructors for your classes anyway, more than likely. But the difference being that now you're going to be setting stuff at a global level, and you can use it from everywhere instead of just using it from this one class, right? It's code you don't have to. It's code you don't have to write again. Did I answer that okay?
Yes.
If I didn't, then tell me. I mean, tell me where the confusion still is.
Yeah. So here, $this.constring equals $this.connection string down. The last line on the screen.
50. I mean 60. Yep.
60. Yes. So here we are calling that method which is there in the parent class, right? So this is our first encounter with the parent class. So here we are passing this 4 variables. So you're saying we can use this method, but if there is any constructor in the parent class, we can't use it like this, right? Like how we have use this method?
Right, because let's say that the parent class is just sort of a template or a placeholder for this stuff, right? It gives you the rules that you want to use, and you could call the parent. I mean, I can instantiate SQLCon on its own, but
right,
all I'll get, right, is a connection string, which may be fine. But since I'm almost never going to instantiate it on its own, I'm going to use it from query SQL, then I'm actually instantiating query SQL, which then turns around and says, oh, I've also got everything inside of here as well. So you can see why the constructor doesn't why the constructor doesn't inherit, because I'm not instantiating this class, I'm instantiating this one.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So what we would do is, let's go ahead and flesh this out just a little bit. Is let's take this, actually let's take that and let's put it in another file. There it is. There we go. And now we'll just put that in there. So now we've got our class SQLCon. And now I'm going to save this guy. Yeah, there we go. And I'll call this class SQLCon. There we go. So now I've got my parent class all by itself. And you could have a whole host of parent classes, right? And so now I'm going to take it out of here. There we go. And let me get a couple of these. And you notice how now it's saying, ah, right? But now I'm just going to dot source that guy. There we go. And so that's how this would play out. Right? So when I've got this guy included into there, and this may not be, yeah, it is. When I've got this included in here, it should create this guy first, then create this guy, and it should have picked that up. I would have imagined it would have picked that up.
Should we give the whole .ps one? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Good call. I knew it didn't look right, but I couldn't pick it out.
Yeah.
And this should clear up here in a second. You know, it always takes the language readers a little bit longer. So now all I have to do in any classes, in any class files that I want to put it in, so if I have another class with, you know, login info or AG info or something like that, all I have to do is preface it with this guy, and I should be good. Let me see if this is going to run. It's going to blow up on me. No, it should have picked it up. There we go. It picked it up now. Let's see. Oops, wrong one. So, yeah. Yeah, that should be working. Oh. I may have to instantiate it another way. So let me take a look at that, and I'll get back to you on that. But right now, we're going on the concept. So now you would just put this in whatever file you have, and boom. So now when I change my SQL class, all 40 of my scripts and 12 of my SQL classes that do all of my different things pick this up, and everything is golden.
Yep.
Okay, good. And like I said, I may have to instantiate this a little, this right here a little bit differently. I'll take a look at that and I'll get back to you on that. We'll make a follow-up video. So, all right. If there are no more questions.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.